Hey guys, welcome to the Index In-Depth for Tau Empire. This is a series that we're doing covering all the different factions in Warhammer 40k 10th edition, just showing off all the different basics of the faction and hopefully giving you a taste on how they play. This one is covering Tau Empire. We're going to cover the enhancements, faction rule, army rule, detachment rule, all that sort of stuff, as well as some stratagems as well. And then the second part is going to be covering some data sheets. So let's crack on with this one. So the army special rule or the faction special rule for Tau is for the greater good. This one's a bit wordy, but it actually does add a lot to the gameplay for Tau. So Tau Empire units can sort of work together as observer and guided units to target enemies, causing them to become spotted. Each time your guided unit shoots a spotted unit, it gains plus one ballistic skill, and if your observer has marker light, you get ignore cover as well. But if you make an attack that's not against your spotted unit, that's to say if you split fire, you take a -1 to your ballistic skill. There's a couple of restrictions on this one. Units can't become guided if they're battle shocked, if they're already observers, or they have the fortification keyword. So something to bring up that you may see people talk about is for the greater good daisy chaining. Basically, what that is as per the Games Workshop designer commentary, shooting does not cause you to no longer be eligible to shoot, which means you can you can be an observer if you have already been guided, as per the rules as they are written. That's probably not intended, but it is the way it's written, and it has been recently FAQ'd, well not FAQ'd, but ruled at a Games Workshop event that is how it works. Whether you use it that way is up to you. It's just if someone tries to use it against you, that's what for the greater good daisy chaining is. Just always if you see it written anywhere, just to explain that one for you. As I said before, for the greater good adds quite a lot of a lot more. It's quite a hefty mechanic. There's a lot to keep track of. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Tau is only a shooting army. We don't really do combat in any meaningful capacity. Um, it gives you a bit more meat to the shooting phase, a little bit more to think about. So it sort of adds a little bit more in that front. So it gives you a bit more to work with, gives a bit more meat to the army, which I think is needed. I quite like for the greater good, as it is, particularly if you play it as intended. It becomes quite intuitive, and you can get it becomes quite easy to get used to early on. Um, but moving on to our detachment rule, that's Cao Yon. This one's much simpler, which sort of balances out, I think. So from the third battle round onwards, all your ranged weapons in your army gain sustained 1. Nice and simple. That's all the time. When your unit is guided, weapons in that unit have sustained 2 instead. That's it. That's the whole ability. So the normally what you're going to do here is your big heavy damage dealing units that you're going to be guiding are going to gain the benefit of sustained hits 2, and then everything else gets sustained hits 1. This also does apply to Overwatch, which is quite important. It effectively means we Overwatch on 5. It's the same sort of maths. So we do get slightly improved Overwatch, even though that's probably just it's not really an intention. I think that's just a side effect, but still pretty cool the same. So our enhancements, we have 4 enhancements, as do most armies. So the first one is Exemplar of the Cao Yon. So your Cao Yon, this model, with this enhancement, his unit or their unit counts as being in turn 3 from turn 2. So that's to say you get sustained hits 1 on turn 2 and sustained hits 2 if you are guided. This is really impactful on a commander in a crisis, particularly if they come in from deep strike. It can also be really good on a fire blade. The with to increase the damage output of breaches. Quite useful. The second one is the Pure Tide Engram Neurochip. It works very similar to other abilities that allow you to use a stratagem for a second time. The difference here is that it does not make that stratagem free. You do still have to pay for it. I've found the best use for this one is on again on Fireblades. If you put them in, if you have multiple units of breaches, you might want to use multiple photon grenades, multiple combat embarkations, multiple grenade stratagems. That's where I found that to be the best use for it. Um, but yeah, it can be quite expensive. You probably wouldn't use it on commanders to double fire and fade because that's 4 CP, and it's just not really a thing that you can do. We don't really have any extra CP generation beyond tactical objectives. The third one is Precision of the Patient Hunter. You get +1 hit at range and +1 to wound from turn 3 onwards. Um, it's okay. It's nothing crazy special. Your commanders will hit in twos most of the time anyway the because of the guiding mechanic for the greater good. But it does sort of negate a minus one hit. The +1 to wound from turn 3 is pretty solid, but nothing crazy. I would say this one's usually a pass for me, but interestingly, it is the only one that you can use on well, realistically, the only one that you might want to take on a fire site marksman. It can be quite useful for them. So if you have a couple points left, you might want to run that one. The last one is through Unity Devastation. Other than having the coolest name of any enhancement in the game, the Bearer's unit, when it acts as an observer, is guided unit against lethal hits. Now, this is only when your unit acts as an observer, so you can't take this one on a fireside marksman, as cool as that would be. It does add lethal hits, which we have a very rare in this book. You get lethal hits. Has a very cool ability to have and can really help with anti-tank. You will struggle to fit it in a way that where you can put it on a unit that you wouldn't want to already be guided. So if you were to be doing for the greater good daisy chaining, this becomes a lot better. But if not, it can be a bit situational. But it's definitely a good ability if you can make good use of it, and you can definitely build around this one for sure. So then we're on to stratagems. First one is stim injectors. You get a 6+ Fiona Pain. This one is it seems a bit underwhelming at first, but when you realise that you have things like 6 wound crisis suits or 8 to 10 wound broadsides, the 6+ Fiona Pain can make a big impact there. I mean, if people are hitting you with damage 3, then for the crisis, then it only takes 1 pass save, and you've got an extra holder model in that unit, which can be really key in the right situation. The same thing goes for the broadsides. Just making 1 or 2 Fiona Pains can be the difference between having an extra model and not. And when we're dealing with such small model size units, it can be a really big impact. You can also use it on things like Riptides as a replacement for their all 5+ Fiona Pain Nova Reactor, but you can also use it on stealth suits and any battle suit really. But broadsides and crisis are probably going to be the most effective use for that one. Number 2, we've got Coordinate to Engage, another incredibly named stratagem. This one is 1 CP, so what this does is if you have an observer, it gains the benefit of being guided, but it does not become guided, which is quite important and something that a lot of people miss. So you gain +1 ballistic skill and ignore cover if your own unit has a marker light, and that's only when you target the unit that you are spotting. So this can be good in situations if you've lost a lot of spotters, or if you're have, for example, if you had 2 units of 2 broadsides, like multiple sort of smallish units that wanted to target the same thing, then Coordinate to Engage would be pretty useful in that situation. Ideally, obviously, it's not quite as good as a regular guiding, because you don't get sustained hits too because you're not guided. But at the same time, you can split fire and not take the penalty, so it's kind of a give and take on that one. The third one is Strike and Fade for 2 CP. It allows a battlesuit unit with fly to make a normal move after its attacks have been resolved. That was quite important. If the attacks have been resolved, you have to shoot before you can. You have to strike before you can fade. It's really strong on crisis suits, particularly the Cold Slug Commander, because you can make a 12-inch move. Pop out, shoot, fall back behind cover, or it can also be used to just give you extra distance. So if you move, again with the Cold Slug, if you move 18 inches forward, shoot, and then you can move another 12 you've covered 30 inches in a turn. That's a really not many armies in the game can cover that much distance. Can also be used for stealth battle suits and Riptides. Um, it's kind of a niche use. It's often you're gonna if you do that situation, you're probably doing it for an objective play, but it's worth remembering that you can use it on other units than Crisis, works for commanders and for Shadow Cell as well if you really need it. Number four is point blank ambush. You gain +1 AP if you're targeting a unit within 9 inches. Very simple. Um, this one is 1 CP and it can only be used from turn 3 onwards. I think the limitation is a bit unnecessary on this one, but it is what it is. We play what we're given. Uh, this one you're mostly going to see used on breaches. Kind of seems designed for them, um, but you can use it on other units as well if you really need that extra +1 AP, which is pretty good since a lot of our units lost AP. Number 5, you've got Focus on Grenades, again 1 CP. It causes when you're charged, you can cause an enemy unit to take a battle shock test. And then on top of that, they also gain a -2 to their charge rolls, regardless of what the outcome of the battle shock test is. This one's kind of cheeky. You can sit on an objective with a breach unit, fire warrior team, something like that, and when someone charges you to get you off of it, you can force them to roll a battle shock test. If they fail it, even if they get you and kill you, which they might not because the charge roll's reduced, but even if they do get you, they're not going to be able to flip that objective on you because you've made the most C0 with a battle shock test. So that's a bit of like a sort of cheeky. You can throw it out there and surprise your opponent with that one. But it is a bit of a random roll. It's kind of unreliable to kind of hope a battle shot's going to work. But in niche scenarios, it could be good. Last one is combat embarkation. This allows a infantry unit to embark into a transport if it gets a charge declared against it. The opponent can then redeclare the charge onto a different unit, but the unit that they were charging is going to be in the transport, nice and safe. At first glance, this one might not be super good, particularly if you use play 9th edition. But in 10th edition, transports are so hard to kill. Stuff like like a unit of 5 Warp Talons or something that would make an absolute mess of breaches. They just can't get through a transport like a Devilfish. They just don't have the strength for it. And in fact, a lot of units are not going to have enough in close combat. Are not going to have enough strength to get through a transport. So combat embarkation is a really good way to keep a unit safe. And if you're using breaches or any kind of any kind of infantry really that can get in a Devilfish, then it's definitely worth doing. One thing that is worth mentioning, there are a couple of really niche uses for this one. You can use it to get back inside transports other than Devilfish, because there are some. If you are a drone, you can get inside a Tiger Shark that has the drone capacity, drone transport capacity. Or if you want to get back inside a Manta, you can you can use it to get back inside a Manta. You probably won't, but you can. So yeah, that's it for the stratagems. So I hope that's cleared up a few bits. I'll be giving a few tips there. And the next episode is going to be covering some key data sheets, things that you're probably very likely to see and want to look at if you're writing to our lists. So I'll see you then.